Hey everyone, and welcome to the Jobcast. Today we are talking about imposter syndrome, something that impacts more people than you may realize. In fact, just in planning today's presentation, I've had a number of colleagues confess that it's something that they struggle with. So I'm excited to dig into some tips for overcoming it today. So I'm excited to introduce our guest speaker today, Claire Wasserman, who is back by popular demand. She is named one of Entrepreneur Magazine's 100 Most Powerful Women and is the founder of Ladies Get Paid, a platform that champions the professional and financial advancement of women. Their community of 70,000 women worldwide, myself included, support one another through sharing advice, resources, job opportunities, and more. And that's me, Brandy Warwis. I'm on Indeed's Job Seeker Experience team. We're responsible for creating helpful resources and events like this Jobcast for our users, like you. Take it away, Claire.
Thanks so much, Brandy. Hi, everybody. Guess how many of you registered? 26,000, which is great on one hand, right? I'm glad to know that, imposter syndrome is a topic that is interesting to you. On the other hand, that is incredibly depressing. That means we are all suffering from negative self-talk, right? Thinking that we are, I'm not going to get into the definition yet because we have a slide coming up. Okay, so overview of today is understanding what imposter syndrome is, but sort of beyond the kind of one-liner definition, really digging into the different symptoms, because really only the way that we can approach this stuff is if one by one, we deeply understand what's going on here, and then we get objective. Because it's not just, let's be confident, right? I think we need some more tangible tools than that, which is why the next part is how do you actually combat it from both a proactive standpoint and also when you're in the moment, because they're going to be in the moment of that negative self-talk. So what do you do then? And then the last part here is advocating for yourself, because again, feeling good is just the first step, all right? What are you going to do with feeling good? How are you going to use it to move forward in your career? We could probably do an all-day session on this, but you've got lives, so we're going to keep this to an hour. All right, let's dig into this. It's going to be a little bit of a therapy session here. I want to just tell you, I am not licensed. Do not hold me responsible for any of this. But I have seen thousands and thousands of women, and I think I have a pretty good sense of what a lot of us are going through, and not just women. I want to be clear about that. Okay, imposter syndrome. It is the belief that you are not as good as you have presented yourself to be, and that people will find out. Let's just put the word good to the side. You can really use whatever word you want. Is it smart? Is it competent? I've actually had people in my life that I've career coached who were concerned that if they negotiated really high salaries, that they were then setting this expectation that they were going to come in and be even more amazing than they actually felt that they were going to be, right? And I was like, you should definitely still negotiate. Here's the thing. I want to draw attention to this slide, this image for a second. It says all these people really seem to have it together, and I still have no idea what's going on. Okay, let's look at this cartoon. What do you find here that's funny? Because otherwise it's kind of depressing. Right? What's funny is that all of these people have the exact same thought bubble. Something I'm curious about, and we're going to go over the various symptoms of imposter syndrome, but how many of you have felt like you were the only ones experiencing this, right? Can feel kind of isolating, especially if you're doubting yourself. That means you probably don't want to be asking other people, hey, do you feel this way too, right? Because that's going to be, quote, exposing you. But please do remember, both this cartoon and take my word for it, you are definitely not alone. Okay, so let's talk about the symptoms real quick. And I wish we were in person because then I'd have you raise your hand, although you might have the function to raise your hand. Either way, I'm going to pretend you're doing it. So let's have this virtual hand raising. Downplay your achievements. Is that something you've ever done? And I'm talking about things like, Claire, you did a great job. And then my response immediately is, the team. It was really a team effort. Or, it wasn't a big deal. Or, fill in the blank, guys. How many times have you said this? Right? Even just saying it was luck, taking yourself out of it. And that's, of course, discounting praise. Also, I'm going to throw another question to you. Has anybody ever complimented what you're wearing? And your response is, oh, I got it on sale. Oh, this old thing. Why are we not sitting with this praise? I mean, what is so difficult about just smiling and saying, thanks, I do look fabulous, or thanks, I did do a great job. Doesn't matter if it was easy for you. Doesn't matter if it was a team effort or if you were lucky. You still did the thing. So I want you to take credit, but what's stopping you? That's the imposter syndrome. The next one here is crumbling when you receive negative feedback. One thing I want to mention here is, how often do you think that it's negative feedback, it's critical feedback, but in fact, it's just feedback, right? Or we make an assumption that somebody doesn't like our work or is mad at us, and it has actually nothing to do with us and everything to do with them. But you still crumble. Another example, let's say, I'm going to keep using myself, this workshop that I'm doing right now, let's say it's amazing, okay? It is amazing. And everything goes really well. And then I have a grammar error on one of my slides because this is a true story. And in the past, it didn't matter that this was amazing. It didn't even matter if you learned, right? All that mattered to me was that there was this one grammar error on my slide. So it really is like you just negate everything that came before it. Raise your hand. Okay. Dwell on mistakes. You're in your head. Keep replaying it. People please, right? If you don't want to be found out that you're not as good, smart, as competent as you are, you're going to go overboard. And I should have put that here. Overworking, overcommitting. Fear of taking risks, right? If you're worried that you're going to, quote, be found out that you're not as good, smart, or competent, why would you take risks? And the issue if you don't take risks is you're not going to grow. We're going to get to that in another slide. Striving for perfection, right? The imposter syndrome and perfectionism, I think they're almost the same thing. I kind of imagine them as the same coin and two different sides. I teach a whole class in perfectionism, so go tell Brandy to hire me again. Obviously, the immense pressure to prove yourself. And then the last thing here, which is really kind of, all of this bundled into one thing, is your accomplishments. You view your wins, your output, as the basis of your identity, as the basis of your self-worth. So let's say this slide, things don't go well today. Okay, they will. I should stop jinxing myself. And previously, I would have walked out of something like this and I would say, not only did I do a bad job, but I shouldn't teach anymore. I shouldn't teach anymore. Do you see how I just jumped from this one experience I had, a small mistake within that one experience, and then I extrapolated it to a place, a really dark, overgeneralized place. Okay, we're going to get past this really depressing stuff. I have one more slide that is still going to be in a bit of the negative space. Stick with me because we will get positive in a minute. You're in good company, right? Like I said before, about lots of other people feeling this way. Also, I'd love you to Google, not right now, but afterwards, Google imposter syndrome and celebrity. Okay, because you're going to see a list of people who have publicly said that they feel imposter syndrome. You would not believe these women and men. Right? We've got Justice Sonia Sotomayor. Excuse my pronunciation. That's embarrassing. We have Maya Angelou on there. She's got this great quote about how, quote, I have written over 11 books and I keep waiting for them to realize that I've run game or something. So the reason I want to bring that up is, A, I hope it makes you realize that you're not alone, but B, that just because you become really successful doesn't necessarily mean you don't still feel the imposter syndrome. Because if you're listening to me right now and you say, well, once I have more success in my life, I will no longer feel this. If you don't do the internal work, which I know you know because you're here today, if you don't do the deep internal work, that chasm is only going to get larger. Because the more you do, if you still feel inside that you are going to be found out, in a way, the stakes are larger, right? This is why you're here. This is going to be ongoing work. You don't snap your fingers and it goes away. But I'm going to give you tools. Last depressing slide, I promise. There are serious consequences to imposter syndrome. Again, I know that you know that this is important to take care of because you were here, but I want you to realize that it's, not just about not feeling good. It may really be standing in your way in big ways, right? So, anxiety and depression, okay, we don't feel good about ourselves. So that's one. The missed opportunities part, that's the one that I'm really concerned about for you all. How many times have you not raised your hand for something because you had that self-doubt, that self-negative talk? For example, in a meeting, they're going to think my idea is stupid, or they're going to think I'm stupid, right? Extrapolating it to your identity. I have an idea for a business, and then you immediately think, well, I'm not an expert in it. Yet, I'm not an expert yet. Burnout, here's the thing, and this kind of goes along with the waste of energy. If you are spending so much time in your head spiraling, you are spending precious energy that you are not getting back. Okay, you've got 24 units of energy in a day, let's just say that, and now you're going to spend a quarter of them on the negative self-talk. Imagine what you could do with that energy. First of all, you could give it to yourself and feel better. I think there's just an infinite there are infinite ways that you can contribute to this world, and I'm concerned that you're keeping a lot of them to yourself because you're stuck in that spiral of I have imposter syndrome. Okay, now we're getting to the good part. Is everybody ready? All right. First step here is validate it. Never, ever tell yourself that you are crazy. Please do not use that word for anybody else. This is something I call kind of the judging the judgment, where you already have this feeling of imposter syndrome, and then you hear yourself going, oh, Claire, that's in your head. It's not reality, right? And then you start to have this like inner dialogue about whether you do or do not have imposter syndrome. Just accept this is how you're feeling. This is where you're at, right? Also, just want to be clear here. I'm going to blame society. I'm not going to blame you. Never blame yourself. Well, take responsibility for yourself, but don't blame yourself, because that's kind of the judging, the judgment of the judging, right? We're largely socialized as a society to do work. In America, right? We live to work rather than a work to live, right? So if we put so much emphasis on our output of the things that we do, that's when you start to measure your success and measure your self-worth and measure your identity in terms of work. Things do not go well. Things do not go well. This is life. I really need that to not trigger the imposter syndrome for you. So really kind of separate, here's this thing I'm experiencing, and it's objective. I'm going to deal with it, but I'm also going to protect who I deeply am, right, at that core level. So talking about making things objective, right? This is the getting out of your head, getting some perspective. Treat yourself like a social experiment, little social experiment here. I would love you to track for the next 2 weeks. When does imposter syndrome come up for you? And if it doesn't, fabulous, keep going. Do a third week. When you track it, I want you to write down every single detail about it. Where were you? What happened? Who was there? The reason I want you to do this is, again, first, the act of sort of getting something out of your head, putting it down on paper. That's a good practice. Also, there's studies that have shown that even, keeping diaries, journals, writing things down releases a lot of that negativity by the fact that you've even just written it down. The reason that I really enjoy this exercise is because you probably will discover patterns. This is the social experiment part of it. Look at yourself in a way of, why is this happening? And is there first anything I can do to adjust the situation? Before I'm going to say it's all you, because I've worked with women and men as well, who have said to me, wow, in doing this exercise, I realized I was actually in a really bad environment. I worked at a company that really celebrated competitive culture, and that there were these people I worked with that made me feel less than. And so she still had imposter syndrome, but she then realized that a way to remedy it was, let's find another place I can work, because, life is hard enough. Let's not make it any harder. So that's something I really recommend. Now, after you've done that, I think we can start to plan for it a little bit. So when you know that you tend to have this imposter syndrome when you are, in a performance setting, right, where you have to give a presentation, or you don't know when it's going to happen, but it's probably going to happen. What is the plan? Okay, so this is what has helped me. And by the way, I am my own test case. You can trust me because I have suffered from imposter syndrome many a time in my life, still working on it. And this has helped me. So I'm a very visual person. Okay, you don't have to do this, but I have a little crystals. I got a crystal heart, and I hold the thing. I have it on my desk, but I hold it whenever I'm starting to feel that damn negative self-talk, the don't take risks, Claire. I go and I hold that crystal, and it just reminds me that I am doing the work. Mantra, same thing for mantra. Not sure if I can say this, Brandy, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. Making her nervous here. I wrote a book this past year. I had never written a book before. So clearly I had imposter syndrome, and I had a really difficult time writing. It was almost like I expected the sentences to come out perfectly. And when they didn't, I felt like an imposter. Something that really helped me, and this was kind of a visual mantra, I got a Post-it note and I said, write like crap. Write like crap. And first of all, it made me laugh. Second of all, it reminded me that this was in my head and that the magic comes from the editing. right? The magic is in the process of figuring things out in our career, okay? And the only way you can do that is if you just get it out. The other mantra that I have is when things don't go the way that I hoped that they would go. And something I say to myself is, I did the best that I could with the information, the resources, and the experience that I had at that time. This is where that expression, right? Hindsight is 2020. Something I think we don't give ourselves enough credit for is you only have a certain amount of life experiences. You've never maybe seen the scenario before. So when you're feeling like an imposter, like my book, I hadn't done it before. So I could only do the best that I could do based on the life experiences I had before then. So this is where I want you to cut yourself a little bit of slack. That's me. That's me. I would love you to go find a picture of you, although if you would like to take a screenshot of me, that's fine, but also a bit weird. The point I'm going to make with this is finding a photograph of you as a kid, probably a ridiculous, cute picture right here. Like, look at my outfit. That's awkward. Whenever I have the negative self-talk, whenever I'm feeling that imposter syndrome, I go and I look at that picture and I force myself to say the words that I've been saying to myself. I say it to her. You better believe I stopped saying them, right? Because you probably wouldn't talk to yourself like this. I hope you wouldn't. Okay. Reward yourself. Yes. Okay. These are some of my vices: ice cream, takeout, shopping. So obviously I want to say, within everything within, boundaries, but you can set your own boundaries. The reason I want to say reward yourself is I want you to think now about things that make you feel good and then set up realistic challenges for yourself, and then give yourself a reward. So here's an example. If you track the imposter syndrome for 2 weeks, give yourself a reward. Come up with a mantra, give yourself a reward. I don't want to compare us to dogs or animals, but think about when you're training a dog, right? You're going to give it treats. And this work doesn't feel great. Doesn't feel great because it's going to uncover a lot of stuff for you, deep-seated stuff that maybe is triggering the imposter syndrome. So what are ways that you can inject some kind of positivity in this experience? And then do what's called experiment in vulnerability. This is something I write about in the book. It's a woman that I interviewed, and she looked at working on imposter syndrome almost as if she was working out at the gym. And this was a muscle that she was developing. And for her, the experiment in vulnerability, she would say, okay, at a meeting, I'm going to speak up. I'm going to force myself to speak up. I'm going to share my story with somebody else, because she had felt so isolated. And, when you don't speak up about something, that means you probably have shame around it. And when you have shame, if anybody's read Brene Brown or Glennon Doyle, right, that's where things foster and fester. Okay. So she started to share her story, and even just doing that, releasing the shame, all of a sudden just life became lighter. And she became a source of comfort for other people. That's the thing. Whenever you share what you're going through, if you're concerned that maybe you're being, quote, a burden, think about how you're now allowing the other person to feel comfortable to share themselves, right? Think about how you are now allowing that other person to not also have shame, because you set the example. So please remember, you're not burdening anybody. You're not complaining, right? You're sharing your life experience because you also want to be closer to them. And that's good for them too. And that's, a bit similar, but a little bit different here to finding a confidant who can give you perspective and help remind you of your strengths. I have somebody on speed dial. She's my imposter syndrome friend, right? Where we text each other and say, I'm going down the rabbit hole. And then, she sends me like a joke, like a meme or something like ridiculous, right? That's the way we're, accountability partners, basically. And then do what I call a brag book. Anybody who took the salary negotiation class that I taught with Indeed, you know what I'm talking about. I think this is just so beyond helpful in life, but also if you are looking to position yourself for a promotion, a raise, if you are interviewing somewhere, this is what I want you to do. Go through your email, go through your inbox, go find the emails where people compliment you. Any email, any compliment. Take a screenshot. Go put it in a folder on your desktop, or keep track of it somewhere. I love doing this for 2 reasons. One, it is instant perspective, because chances are you are way harder on yourself than anybody else is. Also, maybe you don't know what you're good at. Maybe you don't feel confident in your accomplishments. Okay, get perspective from somebody else. Right? That could be good. Also just makes you feel good. The next part about it, and this is where it's good for negotiation, right, and job hunting, you're going to use these like their testimonials, right? It's not like, take my word for it, but it's like, hey, client John said I did a good job in this specific way. I do want to backtrack for a second because I've said a little bit of a contradictory thing here. Is earlier I said I want you to really separate your accomplishments, kind of output, from who you are and how you feel about yourself. Now I'm saying go listen to somebody else telling you did well. It's keeping them in check. It's recognizing that we don't want to build our identity and our self-esteem based on how other people perceive us or receive us. That being said, to get out of your head, you need somebody else also talking to you here. And this is a great thing to do. I look at it when I am having a down day. The next thing here, and this goes back to what I mentioned earlier about this woman that I know who tracked her imposter syndrome and found that actually kept coming up in certain scenarios at work. Be careful about that. Environment is so huge. I think it has probably your environment. I'm curious how often you have found your, company satisfaction, or maybe you've left your job. How much of it was actually the job and how much of it was the environment, meaning your manager, right? Or your colleagues. What's going on here? And is this something that you can deal with? I teach a whole other class on office politics, so we're not going to get into that, although I am happy to answer some questions at the end. But this is where you're going to have basically a list of to-dos. Is there a conversation that I need to have with my manager about better communication? Do I need to make the pitch to my supervisor about creating some kind of, employee resource group? Because I see that that's going to foster an environment where people can connect and, have solidarity. So do know that in the exploration of the imposter syndrome, you may find yourself with a whole other list of to-dos, but that's good because this is growth. And if you are not growing, you are not living, right? So embrace this stuff. Please embrace it. Here's the great news. And before I really dug into Indeed, I would always say to people, do your research. Good luck. Google it. Now I can tell you, Indeed.com/companies, you could actually dig into these companies and see what their values are. And it's data driven. That being said, if you are looking at a company, right, you're considering either applying or you've applied, I definitely want you to reach out to somebody there, somebody in your department, maybe somebody who used to have your role. I'm curious to hear from them. How would they describe the company culture? Part of the reason I want you to do that is because it'll give you a heads up of, is this a place that you can thrive in, right? Not just survive, but you can thrive. And then the other part is when you do go into interview, you can use those words. You can say, here are the values as I've understood them, right? Here's the company culture, as I've understood it, and then reflect back to them. Here's how I've lived my life according to those values. So I know that's a little bit of an aside, but point being here is just do as much research as you can. This is, again, social experiment. Got to get data. Watching your words. Words matter. Words matter. I would love for you to tell me what is wrong with these words. Could, should, must, have to, always, never. I love acting those out. Okay, so the issue with these words is, first of all, they sound like you're trying to discipline yourself, right? I could have, I should have, you must, you have to, always, never, okay? The other problem with these words is that none of them are in the present. They are all about reflecting in the past or projecting into the future. I could have done this, right? Well, that's the past. I should have done this, past. Moving forward, I must do this. I have to do this, right? The problem with living in the past and the future, if we were together, we'd all say this out loud, you can't do anything about it. When you are not in the present, you are paralyzed. And that's where the spiraling comes in. You're in the moment. You can actually experience what's really going on when you are deeply in the present. Start a meditation practice. I'm going, off on a tangent here a little bit, but really, just Google, how can I practice being present or being in the moment? I have found that tracking, looking at a picture of myself and learning how to be present as possibly the 3 most helpful things for me in combating imposter syndrome. So a way to, stay in the present is when you are feeling the negative self-talk, when all of those symptoms of imposter syndrome are coming up, ask yourself these questions. Is this thought process helping me? If so, how? If not, why? Oh, look, guys, I'm missing a question mark. There you go. There's my one mess up. I'm human. And now my challenge is to not obsess over it afterwards. Question, is there anything that I can do right now? What's a realistic plan for the future? always asking yourself why too. Anytime you have a feeling or you're doing that negative self-talk, why? Then you give yourself an answer. Why? Give yourself an answer, right? Think about being a little kid. Here's the thing. When you keep questioning yourself, it'll force you to really dig into hopefully what becomes the core of the issue. Because then you can actually, deal with the core and not just all the noise around. So let's do this. Let's reframe it. Let's think about, I should never be late. Okay, I prefer to be on time. How about that? I should never let anyone down. Well, I'd like to help out as much as I can. If you're having trouble reframing this in a positive kind of active way, this is where I want you to find that confidant, that buddy, work with somebody to say, is there a way that I can spin this? I need to turn this around. And don't just say to yourself, be quiet. This goes back to what I said, I think at the beginning where, don't judge the judgment. The other reason to be careful with this kind of language is you're just stuck, right? Again, you keep spiraling because there's nothing you can do. And if you make the words active, it will give you a next step. The other word that I want to just focus on here is whenever you say I am, okay, that's your identity. It's a statement on your identity. I am bad at my job. I feel bad at my job. Please try to replace anytime that you say I am, could you try to replace it with I feel this way? Advocate for yourself. All right, so now we're in a place where we've got our imposter syndrome under control. We know that it is probably going to be a lifelong journey here, but that's okay because we've got some tools to deal with it. But now you have to advocate for yourself because it's not just good enough to show up and feel good. You have to really kind of leverage the feeling good into, am I being recognized and rewarded for it? And you don't wait. You go ahead and you take command of this. So first, it's thinking about your wins. And if you're somebody who has imposter syndrome and you're thinking you're not good enough, smart enough, right? That means you're hard on yourself, which means you might actually have difficulty figuring out what your wins are and what your accomplishments are. So let me see if I can challenge you to rethink it a little bit or to think maybe creatively about it. Obstacles you overcame. So any kind of challenge, it could also be a life challenge because I want you to see, your resilience here and your resourcefulness. Obstacles, anytime that you took initiative, when you went above and beyond, things that you're proud of. So when you talk about your wins, and I'm going to just put this as an example of, it's up for promotion time, it's your annual review. When you talk about the things that you're proud of or excited about, you're effectively raising your hand to them and you're saying, I want to do more of this. I want to do more of this. So you better talk about the things that you actually want to do more of. For example, let's say you created some kind of system of communication between your team and it made everybody more productive, right? This is a great example. And you hated doing it. It was tedious. It was awful. Please do not bring that up because they will ask you to do more of that. Also, talking about things that you're really excited to talk about, that's when your energy is going to come through and people want to be around positive, energetic people. I also want you to think beyond just your skills here. I want you to really reflect on who are you? Not to get too existential about this, but what makes you you? This is kind of the EQ, right? Emotional intelligence. I call it, the in between the lines. A few examples here, and you're going to go ahead and Google your own stuff. By the way, the academic term I think for superpowers is inalienable powers, which I guess if I'd used that, then we could have had a little cartoon of an alien. Missed opportunity. We should have done that. Superpowers. Here are some examples. Enthusiastic. Are you an enthusiastic person? Positive. Are you a leader? Detail-oriented, creative, team builder, empathetic, thoughtful. One that I did not include here, but that is equally as important, patient. I probably did not put that because I am not patient. Okay. My question to you is, do you know what these are? Right? Do you know what these are? And a lot of people do, and I've also taught a lot of people who haven't. There was one small group that I did where I challenged everybody to come up with kind of what makes you you. How do you impact other people? And there was one person who just could not come up with it. And this was a bunch of coworkers, and her coworker said, if you don't mind, I'd like to tell you. And she proceeds to tell her what she thinks her superpowers are. And this woman just started bawling because it was in that moment that she realized how disconnected she was from her actual self, right? That she was completely living in this world of judgment and that the reality, was that other people saw her in a beautiful way. So that was when I said you should maybe see a therapist here. Great start. So point is, if you're having a little bit of difficulty coming up with this stuff, think about who can help you with it. By the way, one thing I want to just mention off of superpowers, when you're trying to reflect on it, I would challenge you to think about what comes most naturally to you, what feels effortless. And here's something a lot of us do, and this was a game changer for me. A lot of us equate work with hard work. So if something wasn't difficult, it wasn't working. No. This is when we tend to go down a path that's actually not meant for us because we assume that things should be really hard. I think there's a difference between something being challenging and something being almost feeling like you're a round peg in a square hole, or the other way around, whatever that cliche is, right? And you know what it is. You instinctually know when things don't feel right. When you're doing something or going down a path, or you're working for a company, or you're in a relationship with somebody who's not right for you, your instinct kicks in. Please, everybody, listen to that instinct. That's the first step. Then you got to figure out what to do. So if something comes naturally to you, you probably take it for granted. And this is where finding somebody else who can give you perspective. The question I'd like to ask them is, how do you experience me? How do you experience me? And then you ask yourself, what feels effortless to me? What makes me come alive? That's also where you're going to find a lot of the imposter syndrome goes away. If you start leaning into these strengths, if you start going down a path or in a direction where things feel natural to you, where your instinct is saying, yes, you are doing what you were supposed to do. Your purpose is aligned. You're not going to feel imposter syndrome as much. You're still going to feel it, right? Maya Angelou still felt imposter syndrome, and she was probably doing what she was put on the earth to do anyway. So I do want to make that clear. But this is when, again, it's not just how you feel, but it's in the situation you're in. The other thing I want to say here is with your superpowers, it's good to know them for yourself, but also I'd love you to articulate them. So when you do have conversations with your manager, you're pitching yourself for, you're having an interview or it's a review time, talk about these superpowers in a way that demonstrates the impact of them. So it's not just, I'm an enthusiastic person, because that sounds weird, okay? I'm an enthusiastic person, and here's how I've seen my enthusiasm impact the team. It's kept morale up, and with morale being high, they're more dedicated. When they're more dedicated, they're more productive. Being more productive makes us move faster, and guess what moving faster means? Saved time. And what is time? Money. Okay, that was a weird tangent. I didn't mean to... If I sounded kind of strange, I'm just trying to show you that there's a whole process of taking what you do, who you are, and then walking somebody through how it makes you excellent. Don't undermine yourself. Again, words matter. Maybe that should have been the subtitle of this. Words matter. What's wrong with these words? I actually have a question. I just think. I'm no expert in this, but all right, we know why that one's not good. Does this make sense? This may be a stupid question, but okay. By the way, I say all the time, so that's fine. Just be aware. We're humans, okay? Here's the issue. It's caveating yourself. It's like you're hedging. I actually have a question. I just think. Here we go. Do you have a question? Do you think it or not? I have a question. I think. Don't undermine yourself. I'm no expert in this, but you might be. Also, who says you have to be an expert unless you're Dr. Fauci or something? Like, it's okay to just be a human that's learning and doing your best. Something that's very important not to do anymore is ending your sentences with, does that make sense? Because why don't you let them tell you if it didn't make sense? And that's where we have to start feeling comfortable with silence and not inserting yourself when there's silence, to not immediately have that imposter syndrome going. They're judging me. They're probably judging themselves. Guys, you are the most important person in your life, which means they're the most important person in their life, and they probably have imposter syndrome too. Right? So let's watch those words. Gmail has a kind of fun plugin here. I think it might be a Chrome plugin. It's just not sorry. I thought it was sorry, not sorry, but either way, it's going to tell you every time you write an email and you say sorry, it's going to call you out on it, because you probably should really only apologize when you've messed up. Like, if you've been a jerk, go ahead. But I am curious, how often in emails that you send is the first line, I'm sorry that it's taken me so long to get back to you. It was probably a day, by the way. It probably wasn't that long. Let's reframe it. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for your patience. Another reason why and this is going to make kind of a larger point for me here, is whenever you're trying to take away a behavior, maybe try to replace it with a new behavior, because you're used to doing a thing. You're used to doing a thing. So even something like maybe replacing that with a pause. I was about to say right. Okay. So see when you can replace something. Also notice, by the way, with all of this apologizing, how often do you walk down the hall and you pass somebody and you're not even close to them, but you say, oh, I'm sorry. I mean, I guess we're not doing that now because we're not really going out much. But, when we were back at the office, I realized I started doing that when people were like way down the hall and somehow I'm apologizing to them. And the time that I was once on the subway and I apologized to a pole, that was when I decided I'm going to tackle my imposter syndrome. I'm going to tackle all the times that I make myself small, because that's ridiculous. Let's talk about presenting with confidence, right? Because we're feeling good. We've got the tools to combat the imposter syndrome. We're able to articulate our wins. Okay. All of this is super helpful in order to be recognized, right? And be rewarded. Now I'm going to put you in a scenario where you got some pressure. You've got some pressure. Okay. So let's think about meetings. Since not everybody's giving an Indeed presentation to 3,000 people, that's some pressure. But even just 3 people in a meeting, that's a lot of pressure. So first, this is something I also talk about in my negotiation class, because when you're negotiating, that obviously is a pressure cooker of a situation. Imagine yourself like you are in a movie. You're the main character, because we root for the main character usually, right? You're the main character, and we watch this main character, and first of all, you're probably going to feel a sense of endearment to that character, again, because we're hardest on ourselves. So if you're now the main character, you've got some distance. What you realize when you're watching this movie with this character, whatever the experiences that they have, they're going to present, or they're negotiating their salary, if they mess up, if it doesn't go the way that they wanted it to, whatever happens, you as the movie viewer, you recognize that it's just one scene. It is a scene that will lead to the next scene, that will lead to the next scene. You also look at it and you go, that had to happen for that character to learn. That had to happen for that character to discover they don't want to work there anymore. Okay. That had to happen for that character to meet the love of their life. I mean, whatever it is. And so you start to see these things in perspective. And then we have to let go. So this is huge. And I maybe alluded to it a little bit earlier. This has also been game-changing for me. Anytime that I'm in a situation where I am going to be presenting to somebody else, or somebody else's input is going to be part of my experience, so, and it could be, I'm going to just give the example here now, this presentation. I used to think to myself, my success is only if people like the presentation. I almost didn't even care how it went for me. It was all about if I got good feedback. By the way, any feedback I get, obviously, they're usually quite good. There's always people who are so negative, and I've had to learn to just let it roll off my back and how to not let it kind of trigger that imposter syndrome. Okay. But the letting go part is saying success has nothing to do with them, because they might be having a bad day. They may happen to know this information already. They may not like me. Right? Used to be obsessed with trying to be liked. I've let that go. So the letting go part is saying, my experience is going to be what I make it to be. And then I challenge myself. What am I going to learn today? If I can walk away with one piece of learning about myself, then that is success, because doing that, then I know I'm going to improve. It's too fickle to hope that somebody else enjoys it. And that's also taking back some control. And then focusing. So before you go into, again, a scenario that can trigger imposter syndrome, performance, meeting, whatever it is, focus on a word. Focus on a visual. What is the word that you want to appear as? And you have to pick just one, because I know we want to appear confident and fill in a bunch of other words, right? Lots of things. I want to appear calm. Well, I didn't do a good job of that today. So today I wanted to appear high energy. I wanted to bring a lot of energy for you guys. And then I visualized, what does energy look like? And for me, it wasn't so much what do I look like, because then I started to judge myself, right? We look in the mirror and we tend to judge ourselves. So instead, light, this energy, for me, all of a sudden I had a bright light. So before I came in here, I really sat with myself and I said, I want to channel energy. And I just thought of this bright light, and hopefully I brought it. And then taking up space. So again, in person in a meeting, I would say sit in the middle of the table because everybody's then forced to look at you. In a Zoom room, we don't have that, but frame yourself, right? I really made sure that I was like in the frame. I wasn't too close or too far. And I use my hands. So gesticulate. That brings the energy. People will pay attention to you. Moths like butterflies, right? Or moths to a light. You be the light. And this is where the kind of faking it till you make it. Actually, I'm not a huge fan of that expression because then sometimes you can feel the imposter syndrome. I'm faking it. So I would really just say, how do I want to bring energy to this? How do I want to appear in this situation? And really imagine yourself like that. And people will emulate. They'll emulate. They'll want to be like you. And after all of this, think about everything that you learned. If you really stay focused on this in your life, in your career, that's how you chart your progress. It's always by what you learn. Always what you learn. And stay focused on that. And no pain, no gain, right? I'm going to keep using cliches. If you're not learning anything, you've outgrown the situation. So in a way, you kind of want to be, you kind of want to embrace imposter syndrome, because if you feel like you've always done it before, or that you're as good as you get, then you haven't pushed yourself outside your comfort zone. So just like writing my book, I was an imposter. I'd never written the book before, but what I got good at was dealing with it. So obviously keep working on this. I think that's, sort of a broken record here of that you'll always have it. So it's just about learning to cope and to combat. Indeed.com/career-advice. Fantastic, great resource. I also see that it says COVID-19 resources. I think we could all use that right now. So just last thing about me, because again, we're talking about this being this lifelong journey. We have a whole video library at Ladies Get Paid. Yes, I know it says ladies. Every single person is welcome, and I think you'll find it helpful. 60 plus hours of videos all about money and career. My book, it's available January 12th, but it is available for pre-order now. If you go to that website, ladiesgetpaidbook.com, and you send me your order number, you will get 30 days free to that institute. And join us, ladiesgetpaid.com. And my email, you've got it. Instagram is the best way to get in touch because my inbox is totally insane, which I'm sure yours is as well. So feel free to connect with me on Instagram, Claire Wasserman XO. So, Brandy, tell me what's the best way to approach this, since it looks like there's a number of questions.
I'm going to go in order of the top voted questions, since those are probably going to be relevant for more people. So the first one we have here is, I'm job hunting presently, and I find it hard to apply for jobs thinking I can't possibly be as good as other people applying for the same positions. What steps can I take to combat that?
Great question. I'm not sure what your gender is, but there is a statistic out there that says, I think like women are 60% likely to apply for a job if they fit 100% of the job requirements, and men, doesn't matter how many requirements they fit, they just go for it. Since I'm been using a lot of cliches today, I'm going to use another one. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Thank you, Wayne Gretzky. I think it was Wayne Gretzky. I don't really watch sports. Point being, let them reject you. I know that's hard, and that's why we're going to work on that imposter syndrome. But if you do not go for it, you are guaranteed to not get it. And this is about a learning experience. So first, let's shift the focus. Yes, I know we want to get the job, but this is your journey. So it's actually about what you learn in this. The other thing I want to say is be aware that a lot of jobs are filled internally. So even when they post them online, there's stuff going on in the back end. There's office politics. Oftentimes people get work because they've been referred, right? I teach a whole class on networking because I think that's the key to pretty much all of this. So there's another reason to don't take things personally here. This may have so much more to do with other people than with you and whether or not you are good. Here's the other thing. It's about culture fit. It's about a fit. Same thing like if you going on a date and it's not working out, doesn't mean it's you. It means it's you together. You are not a right fit together. So keep that in mind. The other thing is just make sure that you really worked on your resume and your cover letter. Do make a template, but please make it extremely specific to what the job description is. Use the words in the job description. That's hugely important. Make this very results and impact oriented. So not just I did this thing, but here's what happened, and make it quantitative. Practicing interviewing. A lot of that is, again, taking the words they've put in the job description on the website, the values, doing your research. Maybe the CEO spoke at a conference, right? So you're able to integrate the research that you've done and put it in context of you and why you want the job. So I think I just said a lot of things, but to recap it there is to understand that there's a way bigger kind of ecosystem at play here with getting jobs. It's really not you. Second, it's doing your due diligence of making sure that you have the correct resume and all that good stuff. And that this is about learning. It's about your life. And I also think what's meant to be will be. There's a little bit of, take command, but also let it go.
Thanks there. Yeah, and just to add on there and reiterate the fact that you don't want to filter yourself out, let them be the ones to reject you. And, if you're feeling like you're prepared and those superpowers, just remember that it might be more than just your resume that's going to get you the job. It might be those superpowers, that additional, what you have to offer goes beyond just your experience. And I think that's really important to remember when you're about to click that apply button, or rather not click the apply button. Just remember that you need to give yourself a shot in order to let them give you a shot.
Very well said. You also said the word might, and I'm going to say you definitely want to talk about your superpowers and who you are, because that's what makes you unique. I always say, look at your thumbprint, right? Nobody has this thumbprint, so you have to learn how to be able to articulate that about yourself. And if you could try to use the words resourceful, resilient, fast learner, courageous, creative, right? These are all indicators that you can do the job, because they're trying to hire you for you to learn quickly. Chances are you've never done it before. So if you can demonstrate that you have sort of the wherewithal and the human capacity to do it, that shows that you're unique.
Absolutely. So a related question here. I'm starting a new job at the end of the month. Congratulations. It disappeared here. So I am starting a new job at the end of the month, doing something new to me. How can I start off right and be confident?
Get more information. More information. That will give you the confidence. So the information I'm talking about is, do you know what the challenges are going to be in this job? So whether that is seeking somebody else who's had that job before at the company, or somebody who you might be working with there, or somebody who's had this job at a different company, and this is again where networking comes in, ask them, what is difficult about your job? What are some of your day-to-day challenges? What were some kind of larger holistic challenges? Because then you'll know what you're up for. You'll know what you're up for. And you're also able to articulate that too, by the way, in an interview, which you've already passed. So congratulations on that. Your manager, relationship that needs to be strong from day one. And that comes down to communication, which is more information also. And that's asking them explicitly, what are your goals, expectations, priorities? How do you define success? How do you measure success? How can I do my job in a way that will make you thrilled? Here's the thing. Their success, your success is their success. Have that conversation, create some kind of system of transparency where you are checking in with each other and that you're shifting priorities according to conversations you're having because things get busy. If you have a system in place of a way of communicating with them that you feel good about, you have a sense of what the challenges are, that's where the tough stuff happens. It's in the challenges. The miscommunication is when we lose our confidence. So as long as you're setting the ground rules from day one, and for anybody listening who hasn't done that, it is not too late. You have that conversation and you say, it's because I want to grow here. So it's not that I don't know what I'm doing, help me, but it's, I want to make sure I'm doing the best job, that we're on the same page, and that I become a leader here. So if anyone's worried about having that conversation, it can only help you and it can only demonstrate your commitment to the job.
That's a great tip. Another question here. How do we combat imposter syndrome with humility? So without being overconfident or arrogant?
Well, if you're asking about imposter syndrome, you're probably not being arrogant or overconfident. I always err on the side of, if you even know what imposter syndrome is, you probably have it. So you're probably not. Here's the thing. I believe in myself. Does that mean I'm bragging? Like, if I'm talking about the things that I've accomplished because I'm proud of them and I'm excited about it and I'm tying it to the work that I'm doing, remember, your work helps other people. Your accomplishments are in the benefit of the company. So as long as you keep looking at yourself as, this is helpful for somebody else, this is impacting somebody in a positive way, none of that is bragging. It's only bragging if it's untrue, I think. So err on the side of bragging. We're going to take back that word. We're going to say it's bragging. I'll come up with something else so that it doesn't have that connotation. It's you being excited about what you do and demonstrating how you've helped others and lighting up about it.
Next question here. I am actually afraid to go on interviews. My resume is good and I get the jobs, but then when I get hired, I'm so afraid that my performance will not match my resume and everyone will find out I'm a fraud and regret hiring me. What can I do?
Wow, you are chapter 2. You are chapter 2 in my book. Her name is Reese. She's a real person. That is literally what happened. She doubted. So she got the job. And because it was on Skype, and this was pre-pandemic, because it was on Skype, she felt like she was able to present herself better than if she was in person. And so she really psyched herself out and spent like a year with a lot of self-doubt. Here's the thing. First of all, in interviews, for anybody wondering, like, how do you present yourself in a good way? You can absolutely bring notes with you. Absolutely. And you can refer down to it because you took it seriously. You've prepared your questions. You know what your answers are going to be because you're going to do a lot of Googling beforehand. And you're going to say, it's okay. I'm going to read off of it. So there's that. When you start the job, just first of all, trust them. Trust them that they picked you for a reason. Like you're not giving enough credit to them also. And keep going back to that communication is key because when you don't know enough stuff, if you don't quite know how you're doing, that's when you're going to wonder, am I good enough? But if you're level setting, and it doesn't mean complimenting, but if you're level setting with your boss and you're delivering, this is what we agreed on and you deliver it, chart your growth by how much you learned. Like there's both of that too. And if you're not learning anything, then that's the concern, not the if you mess up. By the way, if and when you do mess up, it is all about how you handle it too. I just think if you're already concerned about this stuff, you're probably going to do great. That's the thing. Like what we have to work on is just, this is imposter syndrome. This is in my head, and go in and watch yourself like a movie. I really think it's going to go a long way.
Yeah. And for interviews specifically, the best thing you can do is just practice. And whether that's with another person that you trust to give you honest feedback, or just recording yourself answering questions that you know are going to be asked, it can really set you up for success because you'll realize very quickly where you stumble, and it allows you to, talk out loud and think through your answers. So once you have that, in your tool belt, you're able to go into the interview, and when they ask that question, you know how you're going to answer, you've practiced, and you probably came up with an answer that really amplifies your skills and your ability to do the job in a better way than you could just off the top of your head when your gut reaction is, oh, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. So just that preparation element, especially for interviews, can really make a difference. And I think we have time for one more question. So how do you know if it's imposter syndrome or if I'm actually underqualified for the job?
I would, and that is a real question that I don't particularly have a good answer for, but I am going to say, what else do you need to learn to do a good job? Is it that you need to talk to more people at the company or ask different kinds of questions? Do you need to do more research about your industry? Do you need some extra skills? So because I think it's a completely legitimate question. I mean, part of it is in your head, but there may absolutely be a learning curve here. And you know what? If it's a new job, and I meant to say this to the other question, I think it takes about 6 months to really begin to understand how a company operates. I don't know what it is even now that we're all virtual. It probably could even be longer. So that's where you gotta give yourself a little bit of grace. I would just ask yourself, is there any more information here that I need to do my job better? And if the answer is no, I don't need to take another class, I don't need to ask somebody for help, then that's where you say, okay, I've done the best I can with the information, resources, and experience that I had, and let it go.
Yeah, and I think unless you've proven to yourself that you can't do something and you've done something poorly, and that's going to obviously impact you and your willingness to try something again. But if it's just about trying something new and you haven't done that before, that doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you haven't tried it yet. So allow yourself to try, even if it means failing, especially if that's going to stop you from applying to a job because you think that you're underqualified. Let yourself try is the best advice I could give.
And I think I said this before, but I really can't underscore it enough. Chart your progress by how much you're learning, which could be slow going. But if you're able to reflect every week and say, what did I learn here? And I'm not just talking about skills. I learned some dynamics, personality dynamics at work, or I learned that my boss prefers to communicate in this way. Then you stay focused on that. Okay, I am learning. And if you feel stuck because you're not learning anymore and you don't know where to get the information, this is where you do need to reflect. Am I in the right place?
Absolutely. And with that, I know we're at time. So thank you to everyone who joined. If you found this to be helpful, check out our other jobcasts at go.indeed.com/jobcast. And for the latest information from Indeed, follow us on social media. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye, guys. Thank you. Thanks, Brandy.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below.